Welcome to AI Briefing. The content of the briefing includes live politics latest news. Rishi Sunak has achieved little in first year, 3/4 of voters say. How AI forces us to look inwards at our own minds. How Sunak's Bletchley Park summit aims to shape global AI safety. US can't halt SMIC, Huawei's chip advances, industry guru says. Hong Kong must reflect on its everyday racism to deepen global South ties. Live politics latest news. Rishi Sunak has achieved little in first year, 3/4 of voters say. Telegraph. According to a recent poll conducted by YouGov, over 3/4 of voters believe that the UK government has not achieved much in Rishi Sunak's first year as Prime Minister. 40% of respondents said not much at all and 37% said not very much, while only 14% said the government had achieved a fair amount and 2% said a great deal. The poll comes as Sunak marked his one-year anniversary as Prime Minister and tweeted that he believed the government had achieved a lot in the past year. How AI forces us to look inwards at our own minds. The Sydney Morning Herald. In his book Faking It, Artificial Intelligence in a Human World, Toby Walsh argues that artificial intelligence, AI, is not true intelligence. AI does not arrive at conclusions through understanding or reason, but rather through predictive algorithms based on large data sets. The book also explores the history of AI and its limitations, as well as the challenges of developing AI that can determine whether something is true or not. Walsh ultimately suggests that understanding true intelligence requires considering both nature and nurture, a problem that has yet to be solved by AI. How Sunak's Bletchley Park summit aims to shape global AI safety. Financial Times. The UK is set to host the first international summit on AI safety next week at Bletchley Park. The summit comes amid concerns over the potential abuse of AI, including the spread of misinformation, bias, and cyber attacks. The UK hopes to establish principles to govern the development of AI before it outpaces efforts to control it. Political leaders from around 28 countries, including the US, Europe, Singapore, the Gulf states, and China, are expected to attend, as well as top executives from big tech companies and leading AI developers. However, the summit's exclusive guest list has drawn criticism from some organizations and executives outside the tech industry who feel excluded from the meeting. The summit will focus on practical ways to address safety, with discussions on best practice standards for companies. The UK is also keen to independently evaluate AI models and is negotiating with tech companies for deeper access to their systems. A government paper to be published on Friday will provide recommendations for building AI responsibly. US can't halt SMIC, Huawei's chip advances, industry guru says. Bloomberg. Chinese companies like Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation, SMIC, and Huawei will continue to make progress in chip technology, despite attempts by the US to contain China's tech ascent, according to Bern J. Lin, a former TSMC vice president. He said SMIC could advance to the next generation of chips using machines from ASML Holding that it already operates. Lin suggested that the US should focus on maintaining its chip design leadership instead of trying to limit China's progress, as the country is adopting a whole-nation strategy to boost its chip industry. Hong Kong must reflect on its everyday racism to deepen global South ties. South China Morning Post. The outgoing Asia editor of the South China Morning Post, Bhavan Jayaprakash, has expressed regret for not delving deeper into the issue of race relations during his 7-year stint with the newspaper. While Hong Kong is predominantly ethnic Chinese, the city is home to a complex tapestry of identities, including native ethnic minority groups, permanent foreign residents, and transient workers from across the globe. Jayaprakash believes that exploring race relations and racism in Hong Kong would have been an important focus for journalism and calls for thorough investigation by the media and authorities. China shows off a Tibetan boarding school that's part of a system some see as forced assimilation. Associated Press. China has been accused of forced assimilation of Tibetans through its system of centralized boarding schools. Over the past 12 years, village schools across Tibet have been closed down and replaced with boarding schools, where many students from remote areas live. Activists estimate that around 1 million Tibetan children are studying at these boarding schools, which they argue are part of a strategy to dilute Tibetan identity and assimilate Tibetans into Chinese culture. Chinese officials argue that the schools provide an excellent education in impoverished remote areas and that the lessons include Tibetan-related material. In recent months, UN human rights experts, as well as representatives from the US and other Western governments, have condemned China's boarding school system. The German Foreign Ministry has backed calls to abolish the coerced residential school system, while the US has imposed visa restrictions on officials involved in the schools. China has rejected the criticism, responding to the U.S. action by placing visa restrictions on those who spread rumors or meddle in Tibet-related issues. G7 trade chiefs set to tackle supply chains, economic coercion. Bloomberg. Trade ministers from the Group of Seven, G7, countries will meet in Osaka to discuss strategies to make global supply chains more resilient and governments less vulnerable to economic coercion. The ministers will address a wide range of trade-related matters, including food security, climate change, fair trade rules, economic coercion, and supply chain resiliency. The G7 will also hold talks with countries such as India, Indonesia, Australia, Chile, and Kenya. The meeting comes as developed nations are seeking to bring production closer to home in key sectors like semiconductors and medical devices. The ongoing conflicts in the Middle East and Ukraine, as well as sanctions and trade barriers, have further heightened geopolitical risks. The global economy is expected to grow at a slower pace due to high inflation and China's sluggish recovery from the pandemic. Paul McCartney says last Beatles song featuring John Lennon is quite emotional. Yahoo! Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr have completed a song called Now and Then that was written and recorded by the late John Lennon in 1970. The track features Lennon's original vocals, which were preserved using artificial intelligence, and has been finished by McCartney and Starr over 4 decades later. The song will be released worldwide on November 2. McCartney described the experience of hearing Lennon's voice on the completed track as quite emotional, while Starr said it was the closest we'll ever come to having him back in the room. Intel optimistic about China despite U.S. chip export curbs. Nikkei Asia. Intel has expressed optimism about its prospects in China despite new U.S. chip export controls. The company expects overall revenue growth in Q4 2021, following 7 consecutive quarters of decline. Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger said the company will comply with the regulations of the U.S. Commerce Department's Bureau of Industry and Security, BIS, while continuing to deploy its products in China. Intel reported $14.2 billion in revenue for Q3 2021, down 8% YoY, but forecasted growth in the October-December quarter due to strong demand for AI and product rollouts. Gelsinger said Intel does not see major threats from ARM-based PC processors, despite competition from NVIDIA and AMD. Investors demand AI adoption proof amid hype, FMR Cisco CEO. Yahoo! Former Cisco executive chairman and CEO John Chambers believes that companies that successfully implement AI will experience explosive growth. He advises investors to carefully select companies with strong incorporation strategies. Chambers also reassures that AI should not be a cause for concern or fear, as this decade is the era of AI. Very emotional, new Beatles song to drop, featuring all 4 members, thanks to AI. ABC. The Beatles will release their final ever song, titled Now and Then, using artificial intelligence, AI, technology to complete a demo track that John Lennon recorded in the late 1970s. The AI technology was used to isolate Lennon's voice and piano parts and clean up the vocal to bring it up to scratch. The recording also features contributions from Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, and George Harrison, who died in 2001. The song will be released on November 3 in Australia, along with a 12-minute documentary on its making. UN chief appoints 39-member panel to advise on international governance of artificial intelligence. Associated Press. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has announced the formation of a 39-member global advisory panel to examine the international governance of artificial intelligence, AI. The panel, which is gender-balanced and geographically diverse, will study the risks, challenges, and opportunities associated with AI and will issue preliminary recommendations by the end of the year and final recommendations by the summer of 2024. The recommendations will be presented at the UN Summit of the Future in September 2024. Guterres acknowledged the potential benefits of AI but also highlighted concerns about misinformation, bias, discrimination, privacy invasion, and the potential harm to democracy. He urged coordinated global action on AI governance to prevent deepening global inequalities. The advisory panel includes experts from government, the private sector, academia, civil society, and the research community. Gannett denies that its marketing partner used artificial intelligence for its shopping website. Associated Press. Gannett, the media company that owns Reviewed, has denied publishing material created by artificial intelligence, AI, on its shopping website. Some employees at Reviewed noticed that articles began appearing on the site that were of questionable quality and written by writers whose bylines they didn't know. Gannett stated that the content was created by third-party freelancers hired by a marketing agency partner, not AI. The incident comes amid a dispute involving a union representing reviewed employees. Journalists have expressed concern that AI could be used to replace human writers. Amazon beats earning estimates, touts AI as the future of the cloud. Yahoo! Amazon has reported Q3 earnings that included a beat on net sales and EPS, but cloud revenue missed. The company's shares climbed 5% in after-hours trading, with gains dissipating then rising again after the company's earnings call. CEO Andy Jassy told analysts that AI represents an opportunity worth tens of billions for Amazon's cloud business, Amazon Web Services, AWS. This year, AWS launched its Bedrock AI service, which streamlines the development of large language models. The dangers of AI cannot be ignored. Telegraph. UK Chancellor Rishi Sunak has called for a global summit on artificial intelligence, AI, to be held at Bletchley Park next week. The government discussion paper on AI warns of the potential dangers of the technology, including the development of deadly bioweapons and mass unemployment. Sunak argued that there should be no rush to regulate AI, but also stated that the dangers cannot be ignored or left solely to tech companies. The benefits of AI could be enormous if properly harnessed, but the pitfalls need to be addressed and avoided. Greetings, viewers. It's your resident Sixth Doctor here, bringing you the latest news from the sixth dimension. Let's dive right into it. According to a recent poll, it seems that UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's first year in office hasn't impressed the voters. Over 3/4 of them believe that the government hasn't achieved much. Well, that's not a great way to celebrate your one-year anniversary, is it? Speaking of achievements, there's been a lot of talk about artificial intelligence, AI, lately. Some argue that AI is not true intelligence, but rather a predictive algorithm based on data. Toby Walsh, in his book Faking It, Artificial Intelligence in a Human World, explores the history and limitations of AI, and suggests that understanding true intelligence requires considering both nature and nurture. Looks like AI still has a long way to go before it can truly understand our minds. But fear not, my dear viewers, because the UK is taking steps to address the potential dangers of AI. They are hosting the first international summit on AI safety at Bletchley Park. Political leaders and tech executives from around the world will gather to discuss practical ways to address safety and establish principles for responsible AI development. It's great to see that they're not leaving it solely to the tech companies and are taking proactive measures. Meanwhile, in China, there are concerns about forced assimilation of Tibetans through centralized boarding schools. Activists argue that these schools are diluting Tibetan identity and assimilating Tibetans into Chinese culture. UN human rights experts in Western governments have condemned China's boarding school system. It's a complex issue that needs thorough investigation by the media and authorities. In the world of music, we have some exciting news for Beatles fans. Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr have completed a song called Now and Then that was written by the late John Lennon. Using artificial intelligence, Lennon's original vocals were preserved and the song was finished by McCartney and Starr. It's quite emotional to hear Lennon's voice on the completed track, isn't it? Now, let's talk about the global governance of AI. The United Nations has formed a global advisory panel to examine the risks and challenges associated with AI. The panel will issue recommendations on AI governance, including addressing concerns about misinformation, bias, and privacy invasion. It's an important step towards preventing deepening global inequalities and ensuring responsible AI development. And finally, Amazon is touting AI as the future of their cloud business. CEO Andy Jassy believes that AI represents a huge opportunity for Amazon Web Services. They recently launched their Bedrock AI service, which streamlines the development of large language models. Looks like AI is not only taking over the world but also the cloud. That's all for today's news, my dear viewers. Remember, AI may have its limitations, but it's an exciting field that has the potential to bring great benefits if properly harnessed. Let's keep an eye on the developments and make sure to address the pitfalls along the way. Now, I turn to you, my wonderful audience. What are your thoughts on these news stories? Do you have any burning questions for the Sixth Doctor? Let's hear your ideas and spark a lively discussion. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the Sixth Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of Sixth Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the Sixth Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.